Unaussprechlichen Ramblen.
My name is Marco Visconti, and through this podcast I will invite fellow magicians, occultists, artists, and mystics to ramble along with them and my supporters on Patreon. By doing so, I hope to introduce you all to a much wider perspective on magic than what we get nowadays from occult social media, which is frankly beginning to feel very stale, repetitive, and uninspired. If you want to be part of one of the next episodes, join us on Patreon at patreon.com/Marco Visconti by pledging at the Yesod tier or above. And now, on with the unspeakable rambles. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to episode number 3 of the Unaussprechlichen Ramblen, because of course I decide always for the easiest name as usual. Tonight we have special guest, my old friend. I mean, we've been knowing each other for quite some time.
We qualify as old friends, I think.
You are an old friend.
We're definitely old, and now we're old friends.
We are old or old elder, like eldritch friends. I don't know. We're gonna get there. My good old friend Alexis Mincolla, also known as Lex, and tonight we're gonna discuss about many different things, I suppose. First of all, for those of you who've been living under a rock, I mean, it happens. Rocks are actually better than the real world these days. Let me introduce you all to Lex. And this is how he describes himself. Iconoclastic 3TEETH frontman Alexis Mincolla is dedicated to exploring the relationship between archetypes, mythologies, history, and the hypocrisy of the human experience. I'm constantly dissecting the space between chaos and order in the eternal psychic battle between forces with opposing beliefs and perspectives that I like to call the cosmic taint. That's a start. That's quite the start, I would say.
It's a technical term. That's something that you learn much later in the initiatory process, the cosmic taint.
So, I mean, okay, let's start with that. So, before talking about everything else, so what is the cosmic taint? How and why it is a problem?
It's the space between. I think the Germans have a word, chaos kommt, because Germans have a word for everything, which is the sort of struggle between chaos and order. And I think that, it's something I've been fascinated with. I mean, you can trace it back to the sort of, the creation myth of ancient Sumer, the Enuma Elish, where sort of Marduk kills Tiamat to bring essentially order into the universe, because before that it's just primordial chaos. Whether or not that was the first lie ever told, or a parable to learn from is another story. I think there's a lot to be dissected there, and it's sort of been a theme through my project of 3TEETH, as you can tell with the trident here, which Marduk kills Tiamat with, as the sort of divine weapon of creation and destruction. But the cosmic taint is just the space between chaos and order.
So you would say a liminal space. Yeah, a liminal space.
The liminal space between the balls and the ass, I believe. In mechanical terms.
And this, ladies and gentlemen, it's exactly where we're gonna be on for tonight. And so, okay, let's take the cosmic taint on a side for a second. When I first invited you to be part of this this live podcast experience with all of us here tonight, you say that you're gonna tell a story how we met, and the UFO and the UFOs.
Well, we could talk about when we were, I guess, new to the sort of industrial scene as a band, because we started in 2013, 2014, and it was sort of absorbed by a scene that sort of Marco had a certain sense of infamy and as sort of being a bit of a dare I say, a bully at times. He was sort of people.
Yeah.
I think you're seeing a much different Marco these days. But I think Marco was a person that was just kind of like a hard ass too. Like he called people out on their bullshit and a bit of a contrarian. And I think it was funny because people gave 3TEETH a lot of shit in the beginning, because as a band we sort of popped onto the scene and we're sort of making waves, and generally there's a lot of kind of stodgy old rivet heads who just go, oh, this is new, I hate it. So I think that everyone not liking us made Marco as a contrarian go, hey, I kind of like this. If everyone dislikes it, I think I like it. So we kind of immediately got along. Also, being Italian and having that, we sort of all hit it off. And Marco was a supporter of the project from an early stage, which I thank you for. And it culminated us into actually meeting in person, which was at a Resistance Festival in, where the hell was that?
In Sheffield in 2015.
Sheffield.
That's
the beautiful metropolis of Sheffield. For those of you who don't know, it's a really beautiful place. And
we have somebody from Sheffield tonight, by the way. Just let you know.
I love that venue, by the way. I thought that venue was awesome. I thought that was one of the cooler festivals that happened in that scene. I think it's a shame that it doesn't go on. I heard maybe Phil is thinking about redoing it. Anyways, so this was earlier in our stage of kind of like partying too. Like we used to go pretty hard.
We don't do that anymore. We don't do that
anymore. Yeah, and we had played the night before. And so the Saturday we were just kind of hanging out and getting fucked up and whatever. And we ran into Marco backstage, and Chase, who is the guitarist in my band, who has like exactly one speed, which is like 1,000 miles an hour, ran into Marco, and Marco all of a sudden pulled out this green UFO pill. And I was like, dude, don't take that right now. Don't take that right now. Don't take that right now. And Chase was like, boop, and just takes it. And I was like, you never know what that was. He's like, whatever, dude, I'm fine. And like, fast forward to like an hour and a half later, and I'm just like puking everywhere backstage, all over Author and Punisher's dressing room, just like a fucking faucet. And I was like, hey, thanks, Marco, good stuff.
I mean, we were off to a good start. Come on, I have to introduce you to Sheffield after all.
And then it proceeded to me taking Chase back to the hotel, and Chase getting completely naked, rolling himself in all his blankets, and just rolling around back and forth like a fucking caterpillar on the floor for like maybe 3 hours. And I was like, I don't know what that was, but that's a classic fucking Marco moment right there. So
just to let you know, for a while I was known as Narco in 3TEETH circles instead of Marco. So just to give you an idea, that's how we started. I mean, we don't do that anymore. We need to say it for the public. We're old now.
Yeah, I think that stuff has its merits, especially, the sort of psychonautical aspects of doing that stuff. But unfortunately, that stuff definitely takes its toll. I've seen it firsthand. So I by no means endorse abuse of drugs, but much like anything with a little bit of temperance and moderation, there is value there. Yeah. Maybe it took us some time to learn that. So say no to drugs unless, of course, it's in moderation.
I see Jorg pacing around in the back there in front of a cross. That's interesting. Okay, tonight is gonna be interesting.
Is that Jorg down
there? That is Jorg. That is exactly Jorg.
What's up, Jorg?
Jorg was there in that backstage too, in other places, but he was there as well.
Jorg is pretty much always everywhere when we're on tour in Europe, which is great. Jorg.
And look at the Xanthi over there. I'm gonna put Xanthi over here for you so you can see. You can see all your friends. Look at that. Everybody's here tonight.
It's great to see all these beautiful faces. I've sort of been in a sort of like, hermit antisocial phase. So this is nice to see all these people out there. I forgot that there's like people.
So since you mentioned being an hermit, how's it been living on the Ranch Covidian for the last year?
It's been really nice, actually. I think that, it's funny. I think in my early 20s, I really liked being sort of in the center of these sort of metropolitan areas, feeling like you're sort of in this like axis mundi of energy and like these places that are sort of hot spots. But I think the older I've gotten, I really enjoy being in more rural, isolated areas and finding that sort of like that peace in nature. And I think there's a lot that we've like learned from our environment being out there, which has been really cool, and how it sort of informed the creative process in our writing. I mean, we did 3 records in LA. We didn't need to do a 4th record in LA. So I think it's been a really cool experience. And I think most of the guitar, you guys are going to be surprised, is all acoustic. There's a lot of bongo drums on this record.
I think there's gonna be any banjos as well or something like that.
Yeah, there's a couple banjos, a couple lap steels. A lot of just like us recording the sound of boots and spurs, and it's basically just it's like a western.
Fine. Can you tell us when it's going to be out? Because I want to listen to this now.
Well, we're gonna have a single that we're gonna have up for you guys on the 6th of August. So I've got my work cut out for me and trying to shoot a music video on Tuesday, edit it by the 21st, and get a video to you guys. And all this sort of, the world was shut off completely, and now it's like 0 to 1,000 miles an hour, which is a little intense. But I feel like the world is healing in that respect, and we're about to be really busy again. But the album probably won't come out till honestly like May next year, I think we're looking at. But you'll just get a long road of huge singles and a ton of sort of like I guess foreplay leading up to the record, because that's sort of how we like to do it. Yeah.
So, I mean, just to let you know, there's plenty of 3D fans. In fact, a lot of people came to learn magic with me because they were your fans. So thank you for that.
That's cool. I think your Patreon is more popular than mine, which is that sucks, but whatever. I gotta do more work on mine.
So going into magic, then, of course, which should be the focus of tonight. I mean, I sent you some questions, and I mean, I would like to ask you, for instance, for starters.
I didn't read them because I think preparing is for cowards, and I'd rather you guys get like.
That's my man. That's exactly what. That's my man. Finally, all right, fantastic. So you don't know what's happening. You're gonna love this.
Not at all.
So one question that I mean a lot of us here had is that, and I guess it's a classic one. I think you're gonna expect this one. So how do you incorporate magic into your creative process with music writing? Do you let it flow naturally, or it's somehow part of a bigger ritual progress with a focused energy and intent?
I think, and it's something I kind of talk about quite a bit, is how like for me a lot of my process is very practical at this point. I'm not so much into like ceremonial or ritual or magic. I just don't find that like is like where I have my greatest results. But even to pull back a step further for me, and finding that flow state, it's really, I like to oscillate sort of between the fool and the magician, because I think there's a lot of flow in that sort of like precocious childlike curiosity magic that happens when you're sort of in that state of the fool. But then obviously I like to go and I be my sort of more magist, like, super planned and disciplined and sort of calculated sort of intention and changing and conformity with the will and all that sort of, very specific magic stuff. But I think for me, I look at it as sort of like binary sequence, and in the tarot, you get the zero is the fool and the magist is the one. So for me, I'm constantly like finding the right formula of zeros and ones to put as a sequence into whatever I'm working on. Mm-hmm. So for me, it's like, I find that I like in my creative process, I do a ton of, I guess, research and homework and all that stuff that as the magician, there's just dripping with intention. But then I don't like to create in that phase. Like I like to do my sort of precursory work as a magist. And then I like to sort of be in my full stage where it's actually creating, because I find that there's a much more greater sense of ease and sort of wonderment, and that sort of like, like if you're in the studio and just sort of being that fool, I find that it flows through me better.
Yeah.
So I think there's sort of that balance that I'm constantly trying to find, if that answers your question.
It does. It does very, very well, actually. Thank you. Since, I mean, just like a few days, we were talking about the linking sigil, and I know you use the linking sigil in some of your artwork. Did you work with the DMKU particularly at some point, or just one of like you say, one of the things you researched and then it just seeped into your art at some point?
Well, a little bit of both, and it was funny because the Ellis or the linking sigil will sort of draw things out of the woodwork, I've noticed, and it was something we used on the second record, Shutdown.exe, where the whole goal was to sort of like the assault on reality, mm-hmm. which I think maybe was like almost too effective, because here we are now, sort of like
I was about
reality.
Exactly.
Yeah, like the timing of that was really like, all right, let's sort of increase the sort of magical net to sort of see if we can dismantle sort of realities, like consensus reality tunnel, mm-hmm. and it's almost like I felt like almost slightly. And obviously this is sort of egoic to think you could even be responsible for any of the things that happened, but sort of in the wake of all that, it was like, holy shit, reality just completely fell apart.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes you got to be careful with magic. I think that's the lesson learned. Sometimes we want things and there's an intention of things that the consequences of are very not thought out. Not to say that reality didn't have it coming in the first place, but I think that, we definitely are in a stage of almost like post fact, post sort of like everything that we knew is reality has just been decimated at this point, and it's like we're like, where do we go from here? Which I guess there's a good segue into some of the content that we're starting to build for the next record, because I mean, what happened with Meta War, and because I think Meta War was sort of about the wasteland of a post-reality world, and what happens in terms of the sort of information war through the sort of prosthetic digital nervous system that we all feel and are all connected to. And now it's like post the Meta War where this record comes in. So to essentially circle around your answer here was yes, the DKMU is something that we worked a little bit with in terms of people who were priorly in the DKMU, but it was almost like we gave it a reboot, if anything, because it was sort of it had a lot of dust on it and cobwebs, and we sort of dusted it off with it and brought it into a little bit more of a focus again.
I mean, since you mentioned that, do you think it's possible to seize the moment again and maybe now installing a better reality? Like, do you think we did immanentize the eschaton in the last few years? Is this the
absolutely? And I think this concept of immanentizing the eschaton isn't just like, hey, we're bringing around heaven on earth or whatever the fuck we think it's going to be, because it's really about like, it's like half Ragnarok too. Do you know what I mean? Like, we're bringing hell on earth at the same time. Where at the end of the day, it's like, you look at pictures this past week of like a giant fiery hole in the middle of the ocean, and you go, apparently we have manufactured hell and heaven here on this plane of existence. It just matters how far you are from the power structures or how close you are to the power structures, or whether or not you're existing in a sort of heaven or hellscape. So yes, in many ways, I do think we have immanentized the eschaton. It's just not as cool as we thought it was going to be.
I mean, we are doing it on Zoom, It's like...
Yeah, exactly. So I think that in terms of how we sort of hyperstitiously create the next iteration, or even having any vision of the future for that matter, because I do think we're largely living in a very visionless future, is tough. And I think that there's going to be ways to do it. And I think, recreating narratives, more utopian narratives in that respect, they aren't as marketable, they don't sell as well. But I think it's important that those things start to kind of come to light right now, where at least with, I think of a book like Aldous Huxley's The Island, which is sort of his utopian counterpart to Brave New World, which didn't sell as well, and I personally think is a phenomenal book.
That's great.
And it has just so much sort of rich context of a potential like utopian world, and even if it's on a smaller scale like an island, at least that sort of plants new ideas and vision in people's heads. That is sort of like, we only have access to a future that's in our imagination, and when it's easier to imagine the end of the world than it is a new system, I think we're sort of in a problem. And I think that we need to start to use our creativity to come up with new versions of what might be. Otherwise, if you don't have a vision of the future, someone's going to sell you one, and it's probably going to be a cosmic huckster like a fucking Elon Musk or a fucking Bezos or all these characters who are just going to do it for you. So yes, we need to become our own merchants of vision.
So speaking of vision, actually, I want to touch on something that you mentioned. Since you mentioned a bit, like trying to take a stand up against this, archontic powers, if you want, either the billionaires or the system or the government, whatever you want to call it. I think they're all archontic powers in the end. This is actually a question that came from Jorg, and it's more about like, how are you behaving in the context of U.S.-American partisanship? And he says that you seem to be impossible to be put anywhere because you're very critical of the USA, but respect veterans. You have progressive, even accelerationist positions, but seem to live on range Covidian like a doomsday prepper without the otherwise typical distrust for institution. So you're both pro-abortion and pro-guns. How do you reconcile it all?
I go pro-abortion, not pro-life.
Yeah.
Or pro-choice, just pro-abortion. Like, I just want the abortion to happen. So first off, to answer the question, I don't exist on a partisan sort of bipartisan spectrum. For me, I think I'm largely politically homeless, and I think a lot of people are. The idea that somehow you're, the nuanced individual of, a contemporary existence is somehow going to be pinned to one side or the other is for me, absolutely foolish. For me, I'm a complex series of ideas that are ever changing. I don't hold on to anything too tight. I'm constantly willing to learn and adapt and be open to new ideas. The idea that I'm supportive of veterans is because I'm a compassionate individual who feels bad for some kid who got put into the service by virtue of them a recruiter canvassing low income high schools. You know what I mean? These dudes were just looking for an opportunity and didn't have any, so they ended up there. And whether or not they're fighting a war for oil really doesn't make a difference to me. They're fighting a war for their brother or the person next to them, or whatever the situation is. And I think we treat them like shit. So yeah, I'm compassionate to veterans, whether or not I'm pro-war. And to me, there's a lot of things that you can exist in with you can be pro two-way and pro-choice. You can be pro LGBTQ as well as pro two-way. So it's like there's so many things that I just consider myself politically homeless. I don't have a home, nor do I want a home. I'd rather exist as myself as a sort of relentless individual in that respect, and not worry about
You
if
know,
I'm going to be misunderstood.
I mean, I guess in the end, the more you put yourself under the spotlight, the more you will be misunderstood. I mean, I guess we both know that very well.
I almost have like I don't even care to be understood at this point, because I feel like for me the ability to sort of drag people into what I'm doing and then use these sort of like guerrilla ontology sort of tactics to sort of help break open people's minds is fine. I want them to be confused. I want them, I want the military bro who's like, oh, look, he's got a mustache and guns and muscles, to get him in and then have some time with him to sort of show him things he might have otherwise seen or thought. I don't want to sit here and talk to like some progressive, like, occult audience in LA, because, that to me is almost masturbatory. I want to expand message and sort of get people to sort of, melt down those reality tunnels and consider new ideas. So for me, I'm fine with the confusion. I think cognitive dissonance is very valuable in that respect.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm not too worried about that.
I mean, I want to say that, I mean, there's not many people that can be so eloquent about. Like, when you say that cognitive dissonance, it's to be embraced. Then you get also the people that, that want to be Telemites and vote for Trump, which is problematic, which is kind of problematic in my book.
It requires some fancy footwork for sure, but to me, that's just like the authenticity of it shines through. And it is unfortunate that you had a lot of people who fell victim to the Trump con. But those are the same people who, are looking to fill voids in their lives and are falling for anything. I mean, there's a lot of people like that. I think it's a lot easier to end up on the wrong side of history than people would like to admit. And I think that we have to sort of be patient and willing to sort of, have these conversations and entertain these discourse without sort of just going, oh, you're a fucking idiot, fuck that guy, he's a Trump supporter. Do you know what I mean? Like, to me, I think it's important to sort of be patient and understanding and sympathetic to a lot of the perception management tools that have become so good this day and age, that, like, it requires an undoing or rewiring or repatterning that I think everyone deserves a shot at.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that I've been a little bit more, I just say at the beginning, contrarian, but I'm starting to see it more and more your point, because there's no way out.
I don't think telling people "fuck you" helps them change their mind. You know what I mean? Like, I think that just reinforces their side and their position. So I think that it does require a little bit of an infiltration, a disarmament, and then a conversation. Do you know what I mean? And I feel like those are the big magic trick, the big psyop coming up is about bringing people together right now. It's about that's the challenge right now. Like, yeah, cool, it's easy to sort of, go in and beat up Nazis and punch them in the head. Does that make them not Nazis? No, I don't think it does. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think you punch a Nazi in the face at a rally, and that's just going to get them to secure their position more and dig down deeper into their fucked up belief system. But, obviously it's hard to disarm people and sort of get them to sort of, listen for a second. But I think that that's what the psyop takes, and that's what the magic trick is going to take right now. And that's sort of where I try and exist, and it's a challenge. It's not easy. Like I said, it requires some fancy footwork.
Well, since you speak of, I mean, I do think the magic can be the way into it. And so, speaking of that, What positive direction do you see in magic and a culture heading? Where does it see heading towards, or what negative direction? Or also, what captures your attention at the present when it comes to magic and your cult, if anything at all?
Yeah, I think there's you know, a tremendous amount of pros and cons about where we are today, magically or metaphysically or culturally or whatever you want to call it. I think that you're seeing a greater like it's more widespread for people to be thinking quantumly than ever right now. People are thinking more energetically and less sort of post-Newtonian cellular. You're seeing people really understand that we're energetic beings living in an energetic universe, and sort of being open to quantum possibility, which essentially is at the core of magic. And I think you're seeing that shit. You can see it like quantum storytelling now is just it's everywhere. It's mainstream, and I think that through that you're seeing a lot of more mainstream magic or cultural esoteric ideas being pushed. On the flip side of that coin, it does dilute it. It does create, a lot of just aesthetic for aesthetic's sake, which I think is dangerous to, not dangerous, but poses a threat of this sort of the importance of it. When everyone reads tarot for $5 an hour on fucking Instagram live, and like these things that I'm not going to come across like some sort of elitist here. I think it's great, but I do think there's a lot of charlatanism occurring these days. I think there's a lot of people who don't want to roll up their sleeves and do the work and do the study, and they just want to sort of profess that they're some sort of professional to get a buck out of someone. So I think as you're seeing it ushered in as more of an acceptable understanding or spiritual practice as an option through a time period where spiritual autonomy is, I think, at an all-time high. People aren't going to join churches anymore. People are looking to find the sort of the autonomy and the sovereignty of their own sort of spiritual well-being. And I think that magic serves a place in that, or a culture serves a place in that. So yeah, I think there's both sides of it.
And is what is a magical practice, or I don't know, your spiritual practice or whatever that helped you grow, and it doesn't serve you anymore, something that you left behind? Is there anything like that?
I actually don't do as much like esoteric research that I used to. Like I really used to try and find like the crazy sort of like book that was like dusted in the shadows and just kind of like bringing something to life for the sake of being like, I got the book that no one has, check that out. You know what I mean? Like there's a little bit of that sort of snobbery, I think. And for me, I'm just so practical with my magic. I think, over my 39 years of life, I've seen people who are better magicians, who are like a waitress at Applebee's who like doesn't even know that she's a magician, and then like the guy who sometimes is like, I study every day. So it's like I think this sort of allowing it to be more of a natural understanding of magic than rather just like like I can perform Liber Resh Velhelios in my head 4 times a day rather than doing my solar adorations in the middle of Starbucks when I'm like, oh, it's noon. You know what I mean? Like I don't have to do that anymore. To me, it's something that doesn't serve me. I can perform the lesser banishing ritual, the pentagram in my mind before I go to bed laying down. I don't need to be performing the things themselves. So those things don't serve me so much anymore. I'm not saying they're not great for other people, but for me, they no longer really serve me.
It's funny you mentioned Liberesh, because Liberesh is one of the things that everybody here hates. Every time I try to put down the idea that maybe
Why does everyone hate it? I'm curious.
so, well, where to start? Well, I guess that it's because of the having to do something during the day. I mean, the chat is going crazy. Oh, Bryce is just saying because it sucks.
It does suck, and I think that that's why once you've performed it enough, and this is just for me, once I performed it and goes, this sucks, that like I think the idea of sort of syncing up with the sun is something that you can do without necessarily the ritual. For me, I could. Do you know what I mean? Like to put myself at the center of my universe was something that I could learn how to do with being mindful of that. So, like I said, I didn't have to do 4 times a day. I could do it when I woke up, whether that was 10 o'clock or it didn't have to be sunrise. Do you know what I mean? Because to me, that's when my sun was rising. Do you know what I mean? So I think that there was ways for me to sort of bend a lot of these very dogmatic at times things to just say, hey, that doesn't serve me anymore.
I mean, in many ways, I want to thank you because this is, as you can all see, as you do it first and then you leave it behind. So we
Yeah.
say that many times. You learn it and then you toss it away. Eventually, I mean, I think maybe Lex, you agree. I mean, I like you. I almost don't do ceremonial magic anymore. Like
Yeah.
unless I have to perform, a ceremony for a congregation, like Gnostic mass or something like that, which is a heavy ceremonial. For the rest, magic becomes more like breathing, really, like something that you do.
Absolutely. And I think, yeah, to perform it, will allow you to visualize it later if you're just going to do it in your head. And having done it, at least you'll have that muscle memory and that ability to sort of envision it later if you're just going to do it in your head.
Absolutely. So everybody here, do Resh first, and then we can stop doing Resh forever. All right, I have a couple more questions. This is from Peter, and it's a bit long, but I think you're gonna like it. So listen to me. So the year is 2093, obviously. The world is governed by an orgy of corporate incest. Corporations make their own laws now. Orcs and elves walk the streets. Magic is everywhere. A dragon was president, briefly. Tina is a 17-year-old orphan and aspiring magus, working closely with her dark goddess, Babylon. She's an outlaw, running to the shadows with a fabricated identity and getting paid to do the dirty work for corporations. She's a big 3TEETH fan. She calls it classical music. What advice would you give to Tina for surviving in a dystopian future, advancing her magic, and fighting back against the obscene power of the megacorporations?
Well, I love this. This is cool. I relate to this question, having done a tour of duty in advertising. And, here we are living in a world where, like, the world is run by, an orgy of corporate interest. Already, we don't have to wait till 2093. And clearly, like, the whole thing is already, like, roughly in the 3TEETH universe, allegorical universe, with President X being somewhat of a dragon. So, yeah, I think that, you know, if I understood you correctly, it said that she's doing work for the bad guys as well to get by. Is that what
Yeah,
you said?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So for me, I think if you're gonna chop down a tree, you need wood from a tree to make an axe. I think it's important. People like give you shit about like getting up, if you want to rip on Apple and you posted something from an iPhone, everyone's like, oh, fucking hypocrite. You can't talk about anything. You're on blah, blah, blah. I think it's fine, to take your position and infiltrate and learn, especially if you're going to work, you have to change systems from the inside up. People who exist outside the system say, fuck the system. They become these sort of like, in the woodwork kind of like, attic dwellers who are just, largely inert are not going to change anything. I think that, you need to get in there, roll your sleeves up, infiltrate, like it sounded like she was doing, perform, understand their skills, understand how they operate, understand how they talk, go deep cover in there, and then from there you can really start to use your magic to help hopefully change things for the better, and don't get discouraged because I think that sometimes these things take lifetimes to change. So whether or not you saw the change in your lifetime, I think as long as it might inspire someone else to continue to carry that torch of fighting a good fight, whatever it sounds like or whatever that might be, I think it's important to recognize that the work is valued, and sometimes when you feel like it's not doing anything, it's still doing something.
Well, that's. When did you become so wise? I mean, come on, man. Like
I don't know.
I send you on tour, and look, you become all wise and stuff. I mean, come on.
Yeah, that's what happens. I'm just getting out there and just like pounding the pavement. You learn stuff.
All right. Like I said, a couple more questions. This is from Bryce, which is a musician as well. Do you see art and consumer culture as being inherently at odds with one another? For example, music being sold as a commodity and massively profitable, only to a few corporations, or spiritual teaching being sold a la New Age movement, or is it just a few bad actors that ruin it for everyone?
Well, I think that's a good question, and I wish I had a clearer answer, but I think they're at odds with each other, but they're inseparable, and they've always sort of been one and the same. Whether or not you were making art during the Renaissance for the Medici's, like at some point there's a patronage. There's always going to be that going back to the cosmic taint of the chaos and the order. The order is going to to be, the record label. The chaos is you as the artist. The sacred space is the tension in between them. So they do need each other in some ways. They enrich each other in strange ways, even if it is oh, I fucking hate that, fuck that. I need to like write a song against that. Like, to me, that tension is sacred. It's like, you can't, if you don't have the right tension in the guitar string, you're not going to be able to play the note. And this tension between active and passive principles, or whether it's, Dionysian and Apollonian forces, you need that sort of that tension in there. And I think that for me, being signed to a major label, I experience that tension all the time. It's a constant wrestling match. It's a constant battle with, label execs to get things to do that I want, to sort of maintain the sort of integrity of what I'm doing, to sometimes figure out how to codify things, to slide them in there, to get them past people. And I think that it can enrich the process. You know what I mean? Like, I think David Bowie is a good example of that as well. I mean, like, David Bowie was his own manager. Like, I cut his own checks to the end. And, it doesn't take away from being an artist to be able to, like, look at things with a more Apollonian gaze, if you will. Do you know what I mean? Like, you don't have to be the crazy Dionysian all the times. You can come at it with a little bit more of like, okay, cool. I do want to make this a life and a career and something that is sustainable, and that it has to be in a commercial context. And like I said, it's going to be up to you to figure out how to continue the integrity of your message within that. So
okay, so you were not lying us when you're going to tell the new 3TEETH is going to be folk, pretty much. I know that, right?
It's all folk. It's all folk and a little bit of country and a lot of sort of religious songs. So.
I know that's what we want to hear. This is another question. So Bryce also wants to know if your alternative Southern Gothic wear is the official post-apocalyptic dress code.
I think in the U.S. it's sort of becoming there. You know what I mean? It's funny because I think that, like, this alternative thing, like you said, is in a strange way, like, I don't know. Like, we could sit here and dissect why that seems to be hitting. And I think that there's elements of, the sort of like Western existence and the sort of like self-reliance of the sort of cowboy, or living in the sort of, the out on the range, like even living in the desert. It's such an exercise in self-reliance. Like, you're not getting Amazon packages delivered. There's like one grocery store, so you have to cook every night. Like, everything about that sort of way of life is sort of forcing reminders of self-reliance in a time period in an age where self-reliance was probably at an all-time high compared to where it is now. And now we just sort of are creatures of comfort that, without our cell phones, we're like, what are we going to do? So like, I think there's something about a pendulum swinging in that direction, at least subconsciously, that is sort of hitting right now.
It's funny that you mentioned Amazon, because when I moved here in Glastonbury, the only thing that's really happening here is Amazon. So you moved somewhere where there's not even Amazon. I mean, man, that's something.
I know. It was intense for a while. It was like, we can't even get packages delivered. This is nuts. So.
I mean, I'm coming your way in October if the world reopens. If you're not on tour, I need to see this ranch at some point, because
it'd be great to catch up. Just keep me posted whenever you're gonna be out here.
All right, I have one last question, and then maybe if anybody here has something concise, because we're almost getting to our hour. So this is I think this is the most important question of the night. So get ready for that. So as a fellow Italian of sorts, as you are, does pineapple go on pizza?
Schifissimo.
Oh, finally, that's my man. That's it. All right.
But I mean, at the end of the day, I don't give a fuck if you're putting fucking cat shit on pizza. Do whatever the fuck you want. Does it belong on there? No. But you can do whatever you want. Fucking go crazy. So like, I'm not gonna yuck your yum. But for me, I don't like it, and I don't think it belongs there in terms of like their tradition of pizza. It's like, you're not getting that in Italy, But
all right.
Do whatever you want.
Okay, that's it, folks of Magic Without Tears. We're not going to discuss this anymore. This has been going on for the last month, as you can. And I was like,
closed.
It's closed, that's it. All right, do we have some questions for Lex? Quick ones. Do we have a quick round here? Because if not, I think we covered a lot. And thank you, Lex, for being like to be. To,
Of course. I carved out the time for me. It's like I love doing this stuff.
Fantastic. I think that's it. I don't see. Oh well, no, I don't see anything. I think you pretty much like silenced everyone. This is interesting because we had Rodney and we had Peter Lavenda, and there were still some questions left. You just silenced everyone. Well done. All right. Tell us something. I mean, where are we gonna find you? I mean, you're famous now, obviously. Where are we gonna find you? When are we gonna see you?
Yeah, we're dropping music. Next, like August 6th is the release date on the new single. It's a collab with another band called Horror, which is like they just did the feature. It's our song featuring them, which those dudes are fucking awesome. HO9909. You can check out their stuff too, if you can remember that impossible name. I probably wasn't even supposed to release that, so there's a tidbit of information that you got here exclusively. And I'm really stoked on it. The stuff that we're doing with this record is fucking crazy. I guess you'll know about it in a month, but like Mick Gordon from video game Doom, the composer, is co-producing the record with us. So it is insane.
Yeah, I can imagine that.
Yeah, and we've been working on it for like a year now. And for me, it's something that I'm really proud of. We've really pushed ourselves into new terrain. We didn't want to make Metal War 2.0. We really wanted to do something different. And for me, it was a completely different environment to make cool new music. So I'm excited for you guys to check it out.
If you work with me, are you guys gonna like Chase is gonna play 8 string, I suppose, super the tune 8 string?
There's like 12 strings on this record.
All right, one final question that I forgot. And how do you get through creative blocks, if you do at all? Do you use magic or?
I think to me, like the creative block really has to come from changing your environment and going to do something that I like to physically push myself out of creative blocks. Like find a place that if you're just in the rut, you're usually in a physical rut as well. Break up your routine. Routine is death sometimes. Routine can be great when learning discipline, but break your routine. Go out and do something that is not the thing you've been doing. And if it's a creative thing, if you're trying to push yourself to write stuff, go and do something that isn't writing. Like I said, go on a hike to a weird place, do something that really owns your headspace. Go climb. Do something that you can't not be thinking about just that. So, it'll clear the cache, if you will.
Well then, final one again. I haven't been saying for a while, but they're popping up now. So it's Xanti's asking. Xanti's asking if you guys are gonna cover "Save a Horse Ride a Cowboy." What? What is this?
I don't know who sings that song, but there is a cover on this record that I think you guys will all love. I'm not gonna spoil it for you guys, but for us, it's sort of become a thing that we always got to get that unexpected cover that somehow we threw into industrial grinder, and it came out not entirely shitty. So I'm really excited how this one's coming out, and it's gonna be cool.
All right. Lex, thank you so much for being part of this. It's been a blast. Last time we saw each other was in Slime 2 years ago. I really hope we can catch up in the flesh.
But tragic, man. Tragic how the situation with Mac and everything that happened. It's kind of changed the face of that scene for a while. So hopefully that place is still going to be open. We could have a drink in Slime at some point.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Thank you so much. Good night, everyone. Do what the will shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law. Love and the will.
Ciao, Marco.